been moving.
And Karen's here in the room, which is great. And hi Erin, how are you? Good to see you.
All right.
Good to see you.
So if everybody's okay with it, I'll just call the meeting to order. Sorry I can't be with you there in person. I was doing triple duty and trying to make it back into Elmira, which didn't work out so well. So, okay. So, first thing on the agenda is the consideration of accounts. We've got the treasurer's report from July. If everybody reviewed that, Erin, are you good with that? Then we've got the, I think this is actually pretty fun and funny, the hydrogen for the Halloween chemistry donation, which is, I actually have to make sure I go and see that. And the salt bid for de-icing that went to Agway. I think Agway's gotten this bid the last, as long as I remember, being a local entity, but also it goes to the lowest bidder. But we're happy with their service. I haven't heard any complaints. All right. And then 4.4, the transfer of funds for a whopping $68,925. All right. So finance discussion items, we need to elect a chairperson.
Is that possible, Chris, without Eldred here?
No, we'll have to move it forward. So I didn't hear.
I said, I wonder who it's going to be. The mystery.
But we'll move it forward to the next meeting. And I think 5.2, the overview of the budget and budget development. So Amanda, you have the floor.
Oh, Tricia, do you mind presenting here? Thank you so much. So I think the last time we came together, we wanted to do, and I will be brief because I know that we're starting late. And so I am happy to sort of do this in short form, right? So there is a little animation on this first. It doesn't show up on the PDF. That's supposed to say welcome because we're trying to when you do the budget work, you want everybody to feel like this is an engaging topic. So welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to be able to talk about the budget process. Tricia, if you don't mind, the next slide. I wanted to pull together just sort of something that was colorful and just, something that would hopefully engage you later on. Budget work with all the spreadsheets gets really challenging if you don't do it every day, right? It's confusing work. So I wanted to try to pull together sort of an overview of what a budget is. So it is not an expenditure report, right? This is not how we actually spend our money. That's shown in the audit. A budget, when we pull that together and we take it to the voters in May, that is really a statement of our needs and our priorities and our vision. It's a representation of the past, the present, and the future. And I wanted to put that down there because sometimes there are things that are carried forward in the budget because, air quotes, we've always done it. And maybe we just didn't have the time to evaluate it. Maybe we just didn't get a moment of opportunity to say, is it working? So it's still in there. And then there are things that are like current needs, right? We knew that during COVID. And then there are things that we know we have to do moving forward. It may not be formed yet. It may be still kind of in the incubation phase. And so that budget, you're going to see all of those things coming together. Sometimes budgets catch up with the year prior if something wasn't agreed upon, like a contract, right? We might put money in there and then the next year you'll see it actually incorporated in the budget in real time. So just know that a budget really is an estimation. It's a moment in time study. It's what we think we know at that time to support any future operations. And so we do build in a lot of opportunities for fund balance, which is sort of like cushions in the budget, right? So that if we overspend, we know that we can go there. If we underspend, it can go back to support other things that maybe may or may not be planned. And so just know that our budget, it's for the general fund. It is approved by the voters or not approved. And so if it's not approved, we have to go back out to the voters for them to give their okay for us to spend that money in the general fund. It is very prescribed in terms of the timing of all of these things. And I always like to think we're always in budget development, right? So we're right now thinking about, boy, did we do okay with our estimations of funds? Where are we off? Where are we not? Chris just talked about a transfer, right, of $65,000. That's moving money from one area into the other because we under budgeted in that area. And that's very expected of district operations. And remember too that you're always, they're developed sort of in the preceding year of what we're spending. So we're living in the fiscal year 23 right now, although we planned it during the 21, the calendar year of 21 and 22. So Tricia, the next one. The next one is sort of, this was an Eldred homage. She always asked for this slide, and Erin was part of this planning too, right? We wanted a visual, a sort of like, okay, if we took $1, right? How do we spend it? Where does it come in? So we've used this for how it comes in because there's just so many categories for where it goes. So we actually used it for revenue. So revenue is money that comes into the district and supports our expenditures, right? It has to come from somewhere. As you can see, the yellow, the primary area of money that comes into our district so that we can support the operations comes from our taxpayers, right? We levy taxes. We're sending out tax bills. October 1st opens the tax season for people to pay their bills, and that is almost 73% of our real revenue that comes into our school district. The next portion that supports our operations is state aid. So that's a different form of taxpayer money, right? People pay taxes to the state. Those monies come back to us. We also do things that generate aid back from the state, like every time we put buses out, right, we can actually get some money back on our dollar. Every time we build something, if we've run it through state ed, we can actually get money back on our dollar. Not full dollar to dollar, but portions of that money would come back to us. Things that we do through BOCES, we would get money back on our dollar. So that's the state aid. So it's not pure revenue. Some of it is you have to spend it to get it back. And then some of it we actually get just because of our data, like how wealthy we are or not, what our number of students are, our enrollment, and other factors for our community would drive our state aid money. And you can see that makes up about 24% of our revenue. Then finally, there's sort of miscellaneous revenue, which are things like our pilots, which are payments in lieu of taxes. So those are businesses or independent entities that made an agreement, a legal agreement, that they actually can sort of hold their tax payments in abeyance at a certain amount so that they can actually create business in town, or they can, get started up, and so it saves them a little bit of money. We still get money back on that, but not the full tax amount that they would. We also get some money back from BOCES when we build a budget. We build a budget that's larger than what we think we need for BOCES. Whatever we don't spend, that comes back to us, right, in the next year. And then you can see their interest and reimbursements and things. There is a darker line there after the green that separates that then from sort of that kind of pinkish red color. We also use reserves and fund balance to balance our budget. That's another opportunity for us to build in a cushion from our savings accounts to sustain operations or things that might come our way. Let's say we have an emergency around facilities that we need to repair, or a family comes in and they need a lot of services with special education. We never want to turn people away from opportunities for our district to support learning, teaching and learning. And so we build in fund balance and reserves as well for those elements that are predictable, and also any innovations that maybe we want to aspire to do in that year. So we build that in, and we're very upfront about sort of building in those pieces into the budget. So that's revenue, that's money coming in. The expenditure, I tried to do it sort of the largest part, the most down to the least, right? And so salaries and benefits by far make up almost 100 million of our operations. I mean, it's pretty amazing. what we spend on salaries and benefits. BOCES is the next largest, that's upwards of about 14 million. Debt service is about 10 million. Contractual supplies and materials. So contractual is not what we actually spend per someone's contract, it's things we contract out, right? So things like professional development would fall under that. We might have to contract services around support for students with special needs, related services that we would contract out. Transfers are things like monies to go to pre-K, monies that would support some of the capital work that maybe would not be part of the general fund, and support our school nutrition services. That's like the sort of the fourth from the bottom there. All of the utilities, right? Gas, electric, water, oils for our buses, right? Gasoline for our buses, those are the things that would be under utilities. Tuition is things like new routes, right? So we actually get billed for new routes each month, and there are tuition payments that we have to make to an entity like that, and so that would be that's just shy of about $1 million. And then finally, our equipment is just around $1 million, just a little less than the new routes and tuition payments, but equipment are things that are over $500 per item. So that's sort of how the money is expended. And I really like to always put, a lot of times you'll see business officials, we do spreadsheets here, and we do that during budget time, but really we also try to drive pictures, because this is about people. Our budget is about people. It's about kids, it's about families, it's about our staff, it's about our community. And so we are a resource, and we want to make sure that our people feel valued and that we budget accordingly to provide services for all of our young people and our staff. So the next one would be the influencers. And again, I try to keep this bright and cheery, Dr. Brown, because otherwise it gets boring. And so in no particular order, these are, you can call these budget drivers, you can call these budget areas of growth, right? These are things that we have to analyze every single year, right? So we have contracts with all of our bargained units, teachers, support professionals, our employees association, our administrators, right? We have, and our substitutes. We also have direct contracts, some of us, with the Board of Education. Those are all analyzed each year. We have obligations for those, and we want to make sure that we budget accordingly to meet all of those. And sometimes we create memorandums of understanding or agreement in the middle of the year. Something got missed or wasn't working properly, and so we want to have that budgeted as well. Other drivers, right, benefits are things like retirement systems, our employees and teachers' retirement system. We pay for our staff not just now, but through the rest of their lives. We actually are budgeting for them to get retirement payments in perpetuity, long after they leave our active workforce. And our health care costs as well, those also go in perpetuity long after someone leaves our staff, active staff here. Things like special education, social emotional well-being, tech support, right? Those sort of all are like supporting the teaching and learning environments of all of our students. And then our environment, right, in which we teach or in which we learn, the building maintenance, the way that we grow and learn together in terms of our supports and what we need to be an anti-racist district. How do we get there? Our transportation, and then finally our whole child, right? All of our extracurriculars, our club programs, our athletics, our fine and performing arts, right? We want to make sure that those are all fully funded, both for the staff that are running them and for the student experience as well. So those are our budget influencers that we look at and analyze and track. Throughout Finance Committee, and we'll see sort of a proposed calendar, we have our directors coming in and talking to us about almost all of these topics. So that way we get a real sense from the folks that are sort of managing the work of what those factors are and get the narrative from them and the stories from them. Another thing I just wanted to talk about, and we actually did a whole training on this last year, and I didn't go deeply into it, but it's like, how do you read a budget, right? So there's a lot of numbers. You'll actually see a set of 5 different types of numbers. You'll start with a fund code, right, which is 4 digits. And then there's a function code. The fund is usually, it's a letter, my apologies. The fund is the letter, and that's down at the bottom. The function is the 4 digits. It tells you sort of the area of spending. So when you look at our budget documents online, you'll see they start with something with a 1, 0, right? That's actually the district codes, the district office. That would be Tricia's budget, then the superintendent's budget, then the business office's budget, then the human resources budget. Then you go into the 2000 codes for the function, which is teaching and learning, right? That's general education, special education. The object codes are things like salary, or supplies, or equipment, or contractual, right? Some of the things that you could drill down even further. Location is really that. It's what building is that happening, or is it district-wide, right? So Bell Sherman has a code that's different from the high school. That's different from Fall Creek. And then finally, the program code are things like athletics, COVID costs, the fine and performing arts, extracurricular, special projects, maybe like Caroline Wilderness Trail, right? We can create a program code. So if someone were to ask us, hey, I'd like to see a budget on after school opportunities at South Hill Elementary, we could get to a budget that we could actually pull that for someone and show you and say, oh yeah, so you could take a look, we would draw a certain object code, a certain location code, and a certain program code, and we could give you a budget on that particular item. Everything that we do is transparent. Everything that we do taxpayers have a right to see, community members have a right to see. So if we can pull a budget for you to show you sort of how it was planned and how it was expended, we will do that. Because by law and by right, you get to see our operations. There is no secrecy in school district budgeting. There is none. Chris?
Yeah, so with that in mind, that's like, so a lot of times we'll see, especially come budget voting time, folks will look at increases or decreases in where money gets allocated during the budget, and just having the public understand that, you know, sometimes the best way to look at a budget is in a 2 to 3 year sequence, because especially where if you're looking at different buildings or different populations where money may not have been allocated the previous year and then this year it's been allocated, it looks like a massive swing, but in reality it's not, because if you go 3 years back, there could have been a position there or 2 people in that space for that allocation, and then 1 year it wasn't, so it looks like a larger swing or allocation when it really wasn't.
That's right. We are always playing catch up, number one, right? And we could never possibly give all the explanations for fluctuations in any one given budget line. I mean, every year we try to do an FAQ. Actually, we can go to the next slide, Tricia, just so people can be reminded where to find this. We not only put up the budget documents, which are the spreadsheets off to the right-hand side, but we also try to do an FAQ so that those questions that come up each year, right? Like, why did this increase so much? Well, we actually wanted to expand that program. Well, why did this increase? Are we losing staff? No, we actually had 2 retirements, and we actually hired 3 people, but the newer people that are new to the career, their salaries are less than people that have been in the career for 30 years, right? So you actually might see the number of positions increasing, but the total salary amount might stay the same or decrease. So we're always trying to explain those recalibrations and try, anytime a question comes in, that Let's Talk portal, especially during budget season, we're posting new information in live time to the website. I know Erin, we've talked often where Erin will send me kind of a list of questions if she went grocery shopping, right? And it's like, hey Amanda, could you put these up? And within, maybe 48 hours, we try to put that up onto the FAQ. The one thing that I think we always talk about is a website is beautiful if you A, know how to get to it, and B, you have the time to get there and spend the time looking at it. We are always trying to expand our work around getting the information out to people, pushing that information out. Is that tweets when a new FAQ question and answer is shown up? Is that, live Facebook moments? Is that 2-minute videos where I'm explaining certain things, or it doesn't have to be me, someone else, right? I think, Chris, to your point, I don't think we can ever communicate enough. That will always be a learning curve and always be a striving for doing better. So that's my last slide in terms of sort of where to find the information. We absolutely, budget season, we recognize, is sort of January through May in terms of the publicity of talking about the budget. But as Finance Committee knows, we are talking about it all of the time, right? There are also opportunities for us to do more regular communication, sort of finger on the pulse as how are we doing, are we did what we budget and what we're spending match up. We can always do that as well. So Chris, I don't know if there's so much I missed, right? Because these are just like small chunks of information that we try to put into one presentation. And I am always happy to prepare something for the committee on any topic, right? And to do deeper dives or trainings on sort of how to understand or what to expect around any element.
I think this is just for me, and I'd like to get some feedback. I think the upcoming meetings, if we offer portions of the budget lines and speaking to shifts, one of my goals for the next few months is to tie finance into HR and our recruitment and retention practices and what that looks like, so we know where our money's going and why we're doing what we're doing. I think that's going to be extremely impactful. So that's what I have top of mind as far as finance, because I know once we hit February, we're going to start getting into budget season, and we're going to start, really educating the public on what we're doing, how do we put the budget together, where the shifts have been and why. So speaking October through December, for me, I know we need a portion of HR/finance in every meeting.
I love that idea, and I think it ties, I'm looking at the calendar, jumping ahead to the next agenda item just for reference. In October, I proposed long-range planning. In December, we proposed health insurance and other benefits, right? So retirement, both of those topics obviously lend themselves very much to human resources, because the long-range planning cannot exist without looking at our obligations in the bargained agreements, and planning for the future for that. And then obviously the second largest driver is the benefits pieces. So those two meetings for sure lend themselves nicely to that collaboration.
And Chris, I think I concur. It's a fantastic idea. And as we've discussed, we need to pick up what we have kind of lost by letting the legislative advocacy committee go, right? And so this might be a good opportunity for us to have Ladira or whomever, or people who wanted to be more involved in that teacher retention conversation, come to either our committee meetings or HR or both, to just get those updates as how they relate to finance, obviously, with these meetings.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you look at the proposed calendar,
Posting that, Tricia.
With over long-range planning in November, 3+1 will also dig into what we do and how we are fiscally responsible. And I think that in itself is going to be a finance meeting, just breaking down, how we deal with cash flow and manage our available funds that we can manage within the state guidelines. Karen, is there anything that you would like to see that we could put together?
Well, I have a few questions. First on the overview,
Sure.
which then I could connect with the calendar. So you had said this budget overview is for the general fund. What other funds are there?
So on the, Tricia, do you mind going back to that other tab for me? Thank you so much for the slide prior. So Karen, I listed these in the orange box for you so that you could see the other funds as well. So the general fund is what's called the A fund, right? Then we have a school lunch fund, right, which we actually talk about that during consideration of accounts, that there's often a report on that. The capital project funds, that is not, the H fund is like for improvements, and because the debt service actually for the capital project is in the general fund, right, the monies that we borrowed, but this is an additional capital project tracking mechanism for our projects that happen more on a yearly basis. The expendable trust funds is more the health insurance, right, and where we sort of put things, it's like you hold things in trust in a trusted agency fund, and then so you expend those out for a particular purpose, like paying the health insurance bills, right?
And the scholarships and awards at the end of the year for seniors and graduation, and we have some funds that support the district, like the libraries for supplies. They all exist in the trust because they don't end, they keep going, and it's a good place for a lot of donations.
And it's like a flow through.
It is,
Yep.
yeah, well, it's not, I mean, we hold the funds, but we get a list of all the awards that are going out
Right,
to
and
students every year, and we have to treat these funds in a specific way as they were given to the districts. So every trust has a particular document that comes with it that tells why this money was donated and how it should be spent, what student receives it, what is the criteria for a student getting a certain award, and we have to follow that, and then we release the money. But it's very strict with how we can use those funds.
And Karen, I skipped probably another very important fund, the F fund, which is our it's called special aid fund. It really is about our state and federal grants that we receive. So any grants, whether it be title monies to the farm to table work, to MBK, the COVID monies, where all the ESSER, all those funds. That is a fund that also we've reported on in the past here at Finance. I know that Eldred, a lot of times when I'm doing the budget presentations, has always asked me to also present a little bit about the special aid funds because they support so many of our programs as well. And we have staff whose salaries are coded to that special aid fund that may not show up in the general fund, right? But they are staff people on our payroll, just getting paid out of a different fund. So that special aid fund is very important as well.
Did you mention the debt service?
Oh, and then, yeah, the debt
Yeah.
service is around the capital project.
Okay.
So having this as like a presentation like this online, accessible, so that the community, and we could promote it in ICSD Insider too, so they could go to it from now to prep for the whole budget discussion.
Absolutely.
I thought this was a good overview, because one of my questions was what's the percentage of revenue, and that dollar bill showed it. Now, my next question is, which that's a long process probably, why are we different from New York City? Why do we have to get, revenue is 70% from taxes. And they get,
Karen.
yeah, I guess that's a legislative act that we have to go to Albany about.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is
Yes.
Yeah.
designed to work exactly how it's working.
That's right. Sydney, Emily, and I can actually share at the next meeting a couple of slides that when we go to our state, ASBO, which is our Association of School Business Officials, they have this incredible slide of what actually the rest of New York State gets after the 5 boroughs and Long Island, right, get their money, and what's left for us. And it is very telling, what you'll see.
It's very frustrating, if I'm going to speak honestly. It's not telling.
Yeah, really. Tell us how you really feel.
Right.
Did you have another question, Karen?
No, everything was covered here. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And great questions. And, um, I like the idea of putting it on the insider. And we'll also, well, I don't say we, I should say Amanda and Emily and the team will also see in January/February the formation of the budget mailer that we'll see on the website. So you'll see information getting updated regularly as we go through that process.
One other thing that works in tandem with Finance Committee is Audit Committee. So, in October, October 15th is our deadline to submit how we spent all the money, right? So this is the plan of how we're gonna spend it, which is the budget. So last year, our books have been closed. They close on June 30th, right? We're in the process of working with the auditors right now, which is an enormously cumbersome process to ensure that everything's coded properly. By law, there are laws that we must follow with every way that whenever we spend a dollar, it has to be tracked, right? And anything that we haven't spent, right, there's something on the books that you have to, you make an entry. We are tracking all of that for all of the funds. And so Audit Committee is where the report of actually how the money was spent, that happens. That is also on the budget website, because we believe that you cannot actually do any of these things in isolation, right? You have to look at your past year's behaviors and expenditures to drive what your future thinking is and catching up with things that maybe you didn't account for. And so those two things work in tandem.
So looking at the finance topics, and I think the next one, as we go through the long range planning, we could kind of tweak out some topics of mine that we want to dig into as we, is there a finer, more granular piece of those that we want to share with the public to answer the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, so that we can start leading with those to deal with the public.
Chris, this is just a draft, so then that way you didn't have a blank piece of paper, right? We can modify away. We can remove anything from here that we do not feel should be there, or we can shift things around, whatever works.
My goal is to actually expand.
Great.
To really see what, I think Aaron asked us very well. How are we including the taxpayers and the parents and the people of the community in these questions who may not make the meeting, but can go back and look at it. And, because it's a snapshot in time, like you said, and a lot of times there's so many layers to this. To understand the different layers to our massive budget, it's easy to get lost if you look at the snapshot we're discussing.
And to that, Chris, I wonder, Amanda, if maybe we can find a way to reach out intentionally to ask for questions that the community and families and caregivers of students might have about the budget. Like, what way can we reach out to make sure questions are addressed? Like, is there something we can or should put out on social media? Is there something to send home to families in like a school newsletter? Like, hey, we want to make sure we cover all your questions about the budget all throughout the year. Anything you want us to answer, let us know, and we'll do it in these committee meetings, and then that can be posted or whatever. Like, to have that outreach be intentional throughout the year and not just that final rush we get in the spring.
Would it be feasible, and I don't have a problem with doing this, and would it be feasible at the end of every voting meeting to discuss the upcoming finance meeting and saying, for October, it's going to be long range planning. We'd like to hear from you. Please reach out to Amanda, myself, the committee with any topics you'd like us to cover. That way we can get it in advance time. I'm not I'm not sure what social media communications we have in place right now, so I don't want to speak to that. And we'd have to connect with our communications team to see what that looks like, which I support. I just think that's another piece we'd add.
Yes, and in the meeting preceding this one, we had the conversation. Our communication folks are going to be checking out every committee meeting and board meetings, and then sharing a summary, and then foreshadowing what's to come next. So thank you for this. We have a plan in motion, and we will put those things out not only via our social media, but in our insider, and we're looking at emails and having folks subscribe to emails and et cetera. So it's going to be starting to flow. It's going to start to flow. It's pretty cool.
There you go. All right.
One topic that we can add is, communication, finance communication. We could add that to the calendar to have the communication team here. We never utilized, postcards. We've never utilized some other opportunities for updates. I mean, Dr. Brown, I know I can reach out, but if that's part of the committee also, I know they were present at facilities, we could invite them to the next finance committee.
No doubt.
And maybe ask them to come up with some, 3 strategies that we could do to incorporate better communication.
Sounds good.
I like that a lot. So we'll add that to the October agenda. All right. So looking at the lineup, I think we just took care of number 7, agenda setting. And since we're so much better than facilities and we don't need to go over in our time slot.
I like this.
We made your life easier.
It was all intentional. Anything that we didn't cover that we should cover?
Chris, there was just one, there was a request at Facilities Committee to do an overview of the capital project budget where we were. Karen, I think that's great. I'm wondering if maybe I can put that at the end of the Facilities Committee meeting next month and invite finance maybe to start perhaps 15 minutes early. We can do like an overlap, Chris, if that's okay with you.
Well, if finance keeps on their current trend, they're going to have to start a half hour earlier.
Yeah.
No, I have no problem with that. That's
Okay.
fine.
So we might move, so I'm gonna move the capital project finances away from November, put it into October, and do an overlap meeting of those 2. Got it. I wanted to say, Karen, when you said it's like, oh, it's on the agenda. But next week is good, next month's good.
Another question, school lunch fund, do we get 100% from the federal government for school lunch, or is there a portion, or how is that?
Last year, we did get,
Okay,
all of it, we were 100%, all lunches were free, but this year, it's going back to what it was pre-COVID. And so there will be your free and reduced, you'll still have your free students, you'll have your reduced students, and then you'll have your full pay students. So there is no, yes, we were being covered by 100% these last, was it 2 years, Amanda, that we
Yes.
had the free? But this year we'll start having money coming in from taxpayers,
Except
people.
for Beverly J. Martin and Enfield.
Oh, yeah, there's the 2 schools,
Okay, those
that's
are-
right, there's the 2
those,
schools
yeah.
that are still falling that threshold of 100%.
But also we did apply, and Emily helped me with this because we applied for the extension of 100% for the district, but we're waiting for a response. Am I correct on that?
That's what Beth told us at the last meeting.
That's the last.
I don't know, you know what, Chris, I don't have an update on that. I did not talk to Dan about it before the meeting, so let me find out, okay?
Please, thank you.
Yeah, I haven't heard.
Because what we discussed at the last finance was the impact on families, if you have 3 kids in the district and you're paying for breakfast and lunch,
Right.
you're probably looking at $90, you know, easily a month, which is a new bill. So it's a considerable amount if you take everything into effect. Gas prices are up, food prices are up, heating is coming up, and now you have this new bill with lunches and breakfast for your children. It's a heavy lift.
And what we did discuss at the last meeting was the rates, and we were holding the rates at the level.
That's right.
We held the rates at the level that they were in 2019, and we didn't do the normal increase that the federal government mandates schools to do. And we were applying for that waiver.
That's correct, yeah.
To hold the rates
Yes.
at 2019 rates, but I hadn't heard on the other thing yet,
That's right.
like Amanda, so we'll have to check into that.
All right, folks. So looking at my clock, we are, I think, right on time.
30.
So I thank all of you for your flexibility. I see Aaron yawning, so it's getting dark out.
Dark. I have my booster today, and it's
Ooh.
no joke.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did mine last week. It took me out for a couple days.
yeah.
So folks, please have a great evening.